One of my philosophies is your greatness is not about you, right? And somebody somewhere is waiting for you to figure that out. Recognize that, because then they see possibility in you and they'll start to come out of the shadows themselves. So, it's just really important that we get out of the way when we know we have a talent and a gift, and we get caught up in our head, get caught up in how we're afraid of how we'll be perceived or received. It's not about you, right? It's about the world that's waiting for you to show up.
Step into the world of success with your brand amplified, the ultimate podcast designed to unravel the intricacies of thriving businesses. I'm your host, Annika Jackson, and I'm on a mission to uncover the stories, strategies, and secrets that have propelled entrepreneurs and business leaders to success. I love having conversations with my next guest, Talib Jasir. You are a creative entrepreneur, author, life coach. You pour a lot into the podcast community, particularly the Black creator podcast community, whether it is with your network, whether it is with the community, or whether it's with the work that you do helping people produce podcasts. So I really appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you. It's awesome to be here. Yeah. And I love talking to you as well. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, and I want to give a little shout out. This is my 400th episode. So.
Oh, wow. That's major. Congratulations.
Thank you. So it is a very, very special episode today, not just because I have an amazing guest, but also reaching that mark. Who knew? I'd never, when I started podcasting, this is definitely, it wasn't goals. It wasn't any of that, but yeah, here we are. And now it is.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, really, I hope you do something to really commemorate the day, because it's real.
Yay! So let's talk about you. You have always been like me about community, about pouring into people. But where did you get your start?
Where I get my start in being community centered, or life, just that concept?
Career, okay. Getting into community, yeah.
Sure. Well, well, if you want everything, then I'll have to start with the beginning, but not, too long. But I really learned community from where I was raised. My twin sister and I were raised by my great-grandmother from about 6 months old to about 7 years. And we grew up in a very rural area. And I learned community from them in a lot of ways, from the people that lived there, but also the way that my great-grandmother engaged and interacted with people. And I just watched that. She was an example of that. I'm from the era, sometimes I joke, it sounds like I was born in 1875 versus 1975, but this area that I lived in, people still have wells in their front yards, wash basins in their front yards, ice refrigerators where the man came by and put a big chunk of ice in the bottom of the refrigerator. When I was very young, but what I do remember is that people would come by the house, and if my grandmother had food ready or was almost ready, they got fed. When it came to things that came off of our farm and where it was given around the community, and vice versa, people would leave stuff at our house that we didn't have, that we didn't grow. We were a fishing and crabbing community. And so when we caught things, it went across the community. And so watching this, it helped me to understand that community is reliable, it's supportive, it's loving, it's caring, it's genuine, and from that, it's always been my way in a lot of aspects. I'm a helpful person, and sometimes people don't always understand it. It looks altruistic or a nice person or something like that, but it's really just the core memories that I have, and knowing how it made people feel and how people experience that. And so that's my core for community, and that's the only way I know how to be inside of community.
Yeah, that's amazing. I didn't have quite that experience, same vintage as you, but I grew up in Kansas, but I grew up in a little town, but there was always a sense of community around me as well, because my dad had grown up all over the world as a military child. My mom was from another culture, so they'd have dinner parties where we'd have like Italian music playing, and he would but the kids would get to have the fun, I guess, and also grown-ups' hair of hand making the pasta, rolling it out. Like, we had authentic meals, and it was all about bringing people together just to have a great experience together. So themed dinner parties have been one of those through lines. I saw my mom work in the community and churches where immigrants were coming over from Southeast Asia, and she spoke a couple languages, dialects. So she would be the social worker who would go in and just help them learn how to assimilate on the parts they needed to, right? So the basic household stuff, how you discipline your children, things like that. And I would go with her and play with the kids while she was talking to the parents. So I love the fact that community was instilled and what it really means, like a true community from an early age for you. And I think that's one of the things I really connect with you on.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's awesome. Those experiences are something else. And obviously you can go away from them. Yeah. But when they have so much meaning and impact, even for yourself, like you said, you were experiencing it at the same time as you were witnessing it, it makes a difference.
So how did that parlay into what you decided to do for career? I know you have coaching background, you build all these communities, but were you doing that from the beginning of your career, or how did that evolve?
Well, actually, no. My career has been in pharmaceuticals. I've been inside of the pharmaceutical industry for 19 years. And that was all very much based on, you know how when you're a child, you'll jump off the top of the monkey bars without thinking? And the older you get more and more ginger. You only want to touch the monkey bars because you're afraid of breaking a finger. It's my life, pretty much like everyone's, began to be structured and constructed from, our education system, parental influences, and just society in general, where it's, you go to school, you get a good job. That was, especially our generation, that was what was instilled in us in order to be successful. And so I would say the beginning of my life and my career was very much built around scarcity, not knowing really where to go or what to do when it came to the desires of my heart, the things that I dreamed about. I wanted to be a creative. I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but every day I went to a desk and sat down and did the work, right? And it wasn't until I decided, and not just decided because I just one day, but when you have a desire and a goal, it kind of nags at you, it taps on your shoulder every once in a while. I was like, we're going to get to it at some point, and then to do it over and over again. And so when I began to move into life coaching, I'd always been that friend that everybody came to and all that sort of thing. And I've always been a person who very carefully consider what the situation is and wanted to support in the best way with all thoughts around it. But coaching is a skill, and it has techniques to it that have to be learned. It's not just a person who says, okay, I want to be a coach. It is a lot of people like that, but I knew that there was skills and techniques to it. So I went there, and that was the beginning of my self-awareness work. And when I began to get an understanding that, I'm the contributor to my entire life, right? I'm the one who's making these decisions, making these choices, thinking that and believing that I have to do something, or I'm supposed to do something. That was the first time that I got this mirror in front of me that said, it's you, actually. You're the person who gets to choose. And so that's when I began. I began to do the work in life coaching to support creatives and entrepreneurs like me, because, again, that is something that we are very much instilled in, just becoming a part of. I say the American dream is actually the dream of America for us, right? It's that we do those things, not necessarily our dreams. And so it started there. It started really pouring into other people, pouring into other creators and entrepreneurs. Anyone who does that work knows that it's a mutual beneficial experience. You're learning from them as well. And so that even inspired and motivated me to continue to see where else I can go, in life. And after that, I just kept going. I wrote some books, began the online community for Afros in Audio, and then pivoted into the Afros in Audio Podcast Festival, which is in its 6th year. And it was always about community, always about pouring into others, also while knowing that it would also grow me up in a lot of ways.
Nice. And finding your way into the world of podcasting, because you're already a creative soul doing what a lot of us do, which is take the job for the money so that we can have our creative pursuits on the side.
Right.
So what was that like, figuring out that, you wanted to move into this medium of podcasting, have a podcast, have a specific kind of podcast, turn it into a community, turn it into a festival, and help other people achieve their dream of also starting a medium where they can use their voice?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it started with like one of my first workshops where I came up with, I consider myself a philosopher. I think I told you that before. And I was writing, going through my curriculum and agenda, and thoughts were coming to me as I was kind of building out these talking points. And one of them that came to me was, as you manifest your vision begins to manifest you. And what that means to me personally, and I think really means a lot to other folks, is that I started, just like you said, your 400th episode, you didn't start with that in mind. You didn't know the people that would come into your world, that would come on your podcast and be great guests and would turn into relationships, right? You don't know that until you are inside of the vision and allow it to continue to push you forward. And so that audio drama that I created in 2017 was a long time desire of mine that I didn't know I was going to ever be able to accomplish. But I did it. I created it. And I was instantly looking for a community because, again, that's my whole being. And I didn't see it. And so I think for all of us, who want to see something or want to experience something, I believe that if it's to be, it's up to me. And so there wasn't a community, so I created a community. And that was the impetus of everything that's happened from there. From the audio drama, I created the online community. From the online community, I created the conference. But it all started with the audio drama. Had I not done that, had I not decided to do it and get out of my own way, the fear and the doubt that it could actually be done, then none of the other stuff would have happened.
Yeah. I love the couple phrases you've used. And I want to add another one, right? Sometimes people think, if I build it, they will come. Mm-hmm. But you have to actually still put a lot of time, intentionality into telling people you're here, right? So what was that like, going from your dream of, I really want to build this community because I don't see one for me, into getting the first few people into the community and continuing to grow that?
Well, it started with me acknowledging that nothing's new under the sun, right? And a lot of time we have, especially growing up in America and understanding society and constructs as we do now, that there is a colonizer aspect of a lot of things that happen, right? in society. And I knew that I wasn't the first. I knew that. And so what I did was I reached out to those communities that already existed, but they weren't connected. And I spoke with them first, and I said, this is what I want to do. And will you come with me? Will you support this, and will you be there? And had a few of those conversations. And my why was very simple. I remember another conglomerate, I won't say the name, but a conglomerate podcast platform that had done a contest. And the contest was on women of color becoming podcasters. And so over 17,000 women signed up and registered and put forth their best efforts. And about 13 people were chosen. And I wondered to myself how many of those other people stopped right then because of the lack of validation in their mind. The opportunity went away. And I realized that a lot of times we depend on external opportunities to give us permission to keep going or to create. And I really wanted to make sure that as a community, we were not only self-reliant, but we were able to rely on one another and the resources that we already have inside of our communities. And so that was the first step, was to reach out and say, I want to build something, and will you, help me and support me? Because I didn't know. That was not something I knew what to do on. I needed to reach out to people who did have that experience and could support me. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you did that, first of all, my first question is, were you able to get some of those women who didn't get chosen to come over?
I've met a few of them. I've actually met some of the people who were a part of that initiative, who, had their best interests, the people's best interests at heart. And so it wasn't a malicious thing or anything like that. It's just that it was something that I've always known, just like me or yourself. You might apply for an award, or you might apply for something and it doesn't work out, and you take it as an internal, personal statement of how good you are, or if it was enough. And people stop. That's what creatives and entrepreneurs do. And I wanted to make sure that, if nothing else, that's in my coaching, that's in, the work that I do, that we believe in ourselves and understand that you keep going, right? Just because that didn't work out, you keep going. Because you exist, it matters. It matters. and to keep going if that's what you want to do. And so I've met a few of those people for sure.
Nice. What was the next phase? So you reached out, found out, learned from others what they did or what was missing, and then you created your community. Was it, were people coming in immediately?
Yeah, well, we started, our first conference was in Brooklyn, New York in 2019, and very small venue, one room venue, no breakouts or anything like that. But the intention for that conference and every conference since then has been about the day after, right? How do we stay connected in community and collaborate with one another? So we had less than 100 people at the first conference, and it's grown, exponentially ever since. But it was a great conference. It was a great feeling. At that point, after all of the stress and all of the imposter syndrome and all of that stuff that came up, I joke sometimes that I felt like that Homer Simpson meme where I just wanted to fade back into the bush. Like, why did I say that I could do this? What was I thinking? But on that first day, being able to sit there and watch what was unfolding in front of me and thinking, wow, I did this. I put this together. I made this happen. That was the part that cemented that this gets to keep going. And again, with community needing to prove its reliability in a lot of ways, I didn't want to disappear from that. And COVID happened. And we had to go virtually for 2 years. But I was determined to keep this community going, despite all of the hardships that have come from doing this year after year. And so the fourth year we were in Philly was our first back in-person conference, and last year 5th in Baltimore, and this year 6th in Baltimore. But it's really been about just continuing to grow the community from aspiring and new podcasters, which I think is really important, especially for communities of color, people of, different gender expressions and identities. There's more representation that's deserved in this space, and wanting to increase those voices of the marginalized, the underrepresented, the underserved. I think people throw away those terms a lot and forget that that's an actual experience for someone, And because it's an actual experience, it's a painful experience. It's an experience that can cause you to believe that you don't belong, right? And that you don't have value. And so, that's our work. That's what we have to do. And even though this is in podcasting, you just think, oh, well, that's just a media. That's just a medium. It's about the people for me. That's the point.
Yeah, truly. If I recall from our very first conversation, when you also started doing your production side of the work, you were starting it right before the pandemic, and you were doing mobile podcasts.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that and how that's evolved.
Yeah, it's evolved a lot because, first of all, much like anything, just like the conference, I didn't know what I was doing in the beginning, right? And so I developed some really great podcasts, but the sound is, what it is. Well, and that's because I was using the teleconference line to to dial people in. And, the content was great. Content is great, but the audio and all that sort of thing, not so much. And so I built a little space in my house. And when I say little, I mean it. I mean, it was a little corner that I built up and recorded in there. And my dog was right behind me. Dogs snore like they have 3 jobs. But it was a great experience of me learning. And I think that is the opportunity for a lot of us. Some of us, we're stuck in perfection. We're stuck in, the how. And I always say, if you get stuck on the how at any point, it'll stop you before you even start, right? You have to believe that what you have in that moment is enough to push it forward and to grow as you go with it. And so, I began telling those stories. My first podcast was an audio fiction podcast. Since then, it's been all about stories and giving space for other people to tell their stories. So I have a biopic podcast out. We have a podcast called Stories All Around Us, where there's several different people telling their own story. And also do podcast production work for nonprofits.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. And now when you do that work, do they go to a studio? Do you have them build out little studios in their offices? What does that look like? Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, for the most part, my goal was to build something that they can continue on after the services are ended, right? And so that is about building their own podcast studio in their space if they have it, or finding them a studio that they can easily get to and from when they need it.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, gosh, you're doing so many different things. How do you manage everything? And you also have a family.
Well, the good thing is that my children are adults, so that it doesn't stop them from calling me in the middle of anything. Even though they have my location and see exactly where I am, they're still going to call me. But that's okay. That means that I've built a relationship that is necessary. So that's cool. But my children are all adults, and I love them dearly. And my son, he was at the last conference, and he'll be at this conference just to support one of my sons. And my daughter, she was at the first one supporting me. And my wife, and my dogs, we're all here. And it's one of those things where there is intentionality in everything that you do. One thing is we have to forgive ourselves, for things that we don't know until we know them. And you don't know that you're out of balance until you're out of balance, right? Until someone gives you that feedback, that says, hey, I haven't spent any time with you lately. What's going on? And you're like, you're right. I'll change that immediately. I'm sorry. Yeah. And so it's been a growing experience for myself. It's been a maturing experience. But I take time. I'm an outdoorsman. I'm certified in outdoor leadership. So I facilitate youth trips, camping, and I also camp with some of my brothers. And being in nature really, really supports. I take the time to get out of this space here and go for walks in nature and sit and be quiet with myself. I live now in where I grew up and on the Eastern Shore of Maryland. I've been all around, North Carolina, New Jersey, New York, DC, but I'm back now on the Eastern Shore. And this is the most quietest, peaceful space I can be in. So I'll go and sit at where my grandmother fished, and she had us started out in a closed basket, me and my twin sister as babies. And then eventually we got hold the crab line. So I get there and I feel her energy and her spirit there. And that stuff is necessary because as a founder, and I think it goes across ethnicities, nationalities, but as a founder of color, things can be very, very challenging. It's hard to get funding. It's hard to get support. And it's stressful. I don't think we talk enough about the mental and emotional stress of pursuing, your dreams with limited resources. And so I have to take those times because there's been times where it's really taking me to my limit emotionally and mentally, and made me almost want to give up. But I remember my why, and I think that this industry is important, and I think the creators that are adding value to it are important, because without podcasts, the podcast industry can't exist. And it's time for independent podcasters who make up 75% of this global marketplace to get recognition and get what they deserve.
Yeah, 100% to that. I love that we're having this conversation because a lot of times I have people come on who have other businesses, right? And we're talking about being able to have a business, but still be the creative entity that you are and support other creatives in a different way. And I think that's important for people to understand that if you are more of a creative, you can, right? You can become an entrepreneur. You can monetize it. You can start that road. It might be a long one, but you can do it. And you just have to have, like you said, that belief in yourself, and you have to just keep on going. You can't quit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You take the time to create just as much as you take the time to pursue the business aspect of it. Sometimes people ask me, what are you creating these days? Because people know me as a creator. I'm like, it feels like the only thing I'm creating is this conference, year after year. But I do take the time. Last year, I wrote a new book. This year, I wrote a new book in the middle of it all because I needed that time of distraction, of expression, and to be my full self, because despite it all, we're many things to many people. We're many things to ourselves, and to be able to nourish those and take some time to, build that up in yourself. I think it's important.
You mentioned something that I was going to ask next, which was about funding and getting donors and getting people engaged, because it is a smaller festival. It is a smaller event than a lot of the big ones that get a lot of major funding, but you do have some great partners. And I remember seeing one of your LinkedIn posts and also having this conversation with you about the ROI that these investors, these donors, these sponsors get from participating is so much higher because they're engaging with an audience that truly wants to be there and that is super engaged and excited to be there and wants to know about these products and services and can feel like they're being seen and heard.
Yeah. Yeah, it's challenging and it's across a lot of areas. Black Americans happen to be the second largest consumers in America. And so we buy a lot of things, and that's our own thing to reckon with. But we buy a lot of things. And so one of the things that is important for a lot of investors and funders to know is that we inside of ethnicities and nationalities and culture, we tend to trust one another more than we'll trust someone else. And because of that, ads that are read by podcast hosts, they get acknowledged. They get people clicking, right? People will purchase things if they know that it exists and that they know that it's an easy migration or something that will improve their work. And so, yeah, we've had a lot of success with our sponsors, but it's hard to convince people, right, when our society, our constructs continue to devalue the worth and what the actual experience can be if they would only invest. Sometimes we get pushed into this box of inexperience or not knowing and not able to talk about anything else but DEI, right? And the issues. And it's like we've commiserated about that enough. It's about forward movement. It's about what we can do now to change those narratives, not for anyone else, but for ourselves. But there's a lot of opportunity from our community, and the statistics and the data shows it. However, minds and biases are still what they are. And so I'm not really in the business of changing minds or narratives. I just want to continue to show up and be the best selves that we can be and allow that to become its own proof.
Right.
It's challenging, but it's been happening for years. It's not something that is a new issue, not for Afros in audio and not for any other woman or diverse person. This is what happens.
Yeah. But to your point, not trying to force people to change their minds, but actually showing them by example is such a stronger way to actually affect that change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of the things that have changed in society is because of that visual proof, right, of the fact that it needs to change. And, we're going to keep going regardless. And that's the goal, is to do everything that we can to survive with or without it. But it will be so much less stress with it.
Oh, and as for recording this, your event is next weekend. Are people still able to register for it?
Yes, they are able to register for it. It's still going on, and we're still in critical need of some funding, but I'm working hard on that and believing that everything will work out, just because I'm fighting like hell, like I always do each year, to make this happen. But yeah, the registrations are still open. They'll be open up until Saturday, October 18th, and we're pushing forward.
Nice. And what's the best way for people to register or to find out how they could become part of your network?
Sure. afrosanaudio.com. AFROSANDAUDIO. That's the easiest way to learn everything. The FAQs are there, the speakers are there, the sessions are there, and the registration is there.
Talib, I want to ask you about your books now. So you are prolific. What is there like one through line of your storytelling in your books, or are they all different?
They're all pretty different. My first two books, my first book was just, proof that I could do something. I could write, and and make it happen. I've always been a writer. That's always been the one place that I go to express myself. But I never published anything. And so in 2015, I published my first book. It's about a 7-minute read. But I just wanted to see that I could put, my words to paper and put something out there. And then my next book was 2017. And both of those are inside of, I got my dual certified coaching certification in 2015. And so I wanted to begin to do work and share those insights that I have. And so those are the first two books. I call it Advisor to the Throne. And it's basically on the premise of your crown has been bought and paid for. You just have to put it on. And that's Maya Angelou quote. It's also been attributed to James Baldwin. So, if they were here, maybe they'd fight it out. But who knows? Maybe they said it together. Who knows? But anyway, my next book is Say Less, Call It Justice. And it's one I created last year. And it's short form phrasings of my beliefs, my message, thoughts, all of those things. And my last book is Take What's Yours, Becoming a Liberated Creator. And that has a podcast to it and all of that. And always I'm working to disrupt, be an intentional disruption for some of the things that we have inherited and believe that aren't even ours, right? But it's the part of the construct. It's part of society. And that's what my books are about, really about disrupting and forward movement.
Yeah, fantastic. And are those also on this website?
Yeah. Yeah, they're on my website. Take What's Yours, Becoming a Liberated Creator is in the process of being published right now. I'm finishing up the podcast for that because I do think, it's 2024 and in a lot of ways, multimedia is real when it comes to touch points for people. So any creators and entrepreneurs out there who are creating, think about the fact that once people discover you, they have 399 episodes to listen to now. If they just listen to this 400th, right? They start to binge you. They want to know more. They want to learn more about you. And so as many touch points as you can create based on people's, learning abilities and or abilities, if people can't see, they can hear. If they can't hear, they can, and see and or all of those things. You want to consider all of that when creating these days. And so I create multimedia work now. So even my Say Let's Call It Just has an animated version and a soundtrack to it.
I love it. All right. So we're going to put afrosanaudio.com in the show notes. So
all right.
Everybody can find out about it. And I wanted to ask, what are some words, a phrase, family motto, quote, something that helps inspire you every day to continue?
Sure. Well, one of my philosophies is your greatness is not about you, right? And somebody somewhere is waiting for you to figure that out. Recognize that, because then they see possibility in you and they'll start to come out of the shadows themselves. So, it's just really important that we get out of the way when we know we have a talent and a gift and we get caught up in our head, get caught up in how we're afraid of how we'll be perceived or received. It's not about you, right? It's about the world that's waiting for you to show up.
Beautiful. Talib Jasir, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
I'm here to support you in any way I can. I love what you're doing, love the platform. I haven't been listening to fictionalized podcasts, but I'm going to have to start now.
Yes, you do. It's a great genre.
And everybody who's listening, please leave a rating review, not only for your brand Amplify, but also, Talib, do you want to share some of the names of the products you have out right now so people can go to your podcast and leave reviews and follows?
Okay, so Heard is the Afros and Audio interview series that we have out, and we do every Black History Month. I drop a podcast a day, an episode a day throughout Black History Month. So there's 57 episodes out because it's been done for 2 years. The Turnaround Podcast, the true life basketball story of Squirt Holly, and stories all around us. And The Fussings Until One of Us is Dead. That's my first ever podcast. The 4-part limited rom-com series is still available. Check it out.
Well, again, thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who's watching or listening to this episode and celebrating the 400th episode with me. Please let me know what inspires you, what more content you want, because I feel like every 100 episodes or so, I also switch things up a little bit, whether it's the cover art, the way that I edit the episodes, or just the kind of guests that I like to bring on, the stories I want to share. So with that, I'll be back again with another amazing guest next week. Thanks for listening or watching to this episode of Your Brand Amplified. Don't forget to leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast listening platform. And if you want to learn more, check us out at yourbrandamplified.com.